I'm such a mover, and so if I don't move that stuff, I'm going to be falling all over it. So I moved a little bit so I don't fall all over it. Well, I'm glad you are here tonight, and I'm going to be talking about an interesting topic tonight. And it's good. The good news is you've already eaten dinner, right? So you've already eaten dinner, so you're going to be all right tonight. So let me ask you a question. By a show of hands, how many of you have weak stomachs? Any weak stomachs here tonight? Any weak stomachs? Okay, I got one, I got two. Okay, don't be ashamed. Just put your hand up. Just put your hands up. I see that hand. Okay, 3, 4. A number of us have weak stomachs, right? So when you get food poisoning and you have weak stomach, you do what? You kind of throw up, you toss up, all that kind of stuff. Anybody throw up here? Anybody throw up? All right, here's a question for tonight. I want you to share in your circle, share around the table here. Here's a question for tonight. All right, when it comes to throwing up, when was the last time you threw up? When, where, why, and how? When was the last time you threw up? When, where, why, and how? Let me give you my story. Maybe about a year and a half ago, I got one of these things. I was supposed to be on sabbatical, and the sabbatical wasn't going well. Sabbatical is when you get like 8 weeks off, and you go and you travel and whatever. It wasn't going well because a number of funerals, a number of people at the church had died, like right before my sabbatical. And if you're a pastor and people are dying, you don't take sabbatical. At least I don't. Some people would have gone on taking it. I wouldn't do it. So I came back and I did funerals. And one lady died, and I just happened to come down with the flu. And so and this is kind of a pastor's joke, kind of a pastor's thing. People never die at the right time. I mean, that sounds morbid, but people never die at the right time, of course. And so I'm on sabbatical. I have the flu, and this person dies. And so, I probably should have said that. So this person dies. Hope you're not listening online. This person dies. So the person wouldn't be listening online, maybe a family member. But anyway, this person dies, and I am sick. I am so sick. And so I basically say to the family, listen, you guys do your thing. I'm going to come in. I'm going to go up. I'm going to actually do the funeral service. Speak it and do the funeral service, and then I'm going to leave because I don't want to infect anyone else. And so I literally do that. I'm coughing, all the stuff that goes along with the flu. I literally come out of my office, go right up to the stage, do the funeral, finish the funeral out, get back to my office, and I got back to my office, and it just went bad on me. And I just kind of, all the stuff that goes along with it. Got my trash can just fast enough and tossed my cookies in it. Some of that might have been stress, I don't know what it was, but it was really, really bad. So I did it like at the end of a funeral about a couple of years ago. So here's the deal. When was the last time? When, where, how, and why on the vomit thing for you? Share amongst yourselves. And then I'll get a couple from the floor. Share amongst yourselves, and I'll get a couple from the floor. All right.
Once isn't that interesting? Once something like that happens to you, and Chipotle is like one of the best restaurants in there. Now here's my thing. Chipotle, they used to be owned by McDonald's. So for me, that kills it right there. Yeah, still. Now, I think there's a connection. McDonald's sold them, but once they go to McDonald's, I've been there maybe twice. My kids love it. My kids, my daughter's generation, so she loves it. My wife loves it. I'd rather go to Cava, or I would rather go to so I don't. But that's the interesting thing. Once you get there are a couple of things that I got sick of when I was young. Like I had rutabaga, which is kind of squash. Got sick, can't ever go back again. I had watermelon. Got sick, something didn't go well. Watermelon, something but water. I don't. It could have been I was already sick, but because I connected it to God, I'll do watermelon. So it's amazing that if you have something, you participate in something, and it gets you like every now and then. I'll get an egg, or I'll do too many eggs, and the party's over. So I mean, I don't know whether I had a bag one time or something like that. So I mean, so I give it about 3. And I like it.
Oh, no, I know.
I'm getting ready to move into that now. I don't know if I'm gonna do insanity. I think I'm gonna do. I'll have to do something before I do CrossFit. I can't do.
No. I just
CrossFit
haven't.
first. You gotta do something to get you. Insanity would be better because you're choosing your own way and then moving to CrossFit. But I'm gonna do CrossFit.
That's good.
So I'm with my old man. I need to. I stop it. Just
Used to be wild. Like, where I used to live out there.
Exercise.
You know where Costco is?
It will actually get very
No, right now it's Atlantic City.
but then like when she started
Jordan was very nice.
There used to be one that we could.
That's what I think it is. I think mine came from early because I was
Yeah, I guess, you know, there is one, or not on
Then
Main Street.
yeah, you said
Lower
not
Manhattan.
anymore.
You know where, you know, oh, do you,
All right.
oh, you don't gonna know.
I'm assuming you talked among yourselves. Now someone out of your group decide who's going to share their story. Whoever has the best story. You know, the best story in this case is not always the best story. Best story in this case could be the worst story. But everybody decide who's going to share the story, the best story in your little talk group. So if you're going to share the story, just kind of I guess we can hear each other. I want to make sure they can hear you there.
Oh, they can.
They can, okay. So if you're going to share their story, just kind of stand up and just speak really clearly and share your story. I know everybody's volunteering somebody else. All right, stand up.
Last time I threw up, how
When, where, how, why?
the last time I threw up was 2 days ago. I was at the gym and I was doing my regular cardio. So I decided I wanted to turn up because I had extra pre-workout. And so I decided to do 3 miles instead. And I went really hard. And my body couldn't take it. And then I ran to the bathroom. I just pumped it from the side. I was going to the bathroom and threw up.
Oh man, okay. I'm getting ready to go in that direction. Just gotta be careful. Somebody else told the exercise story. Yeah. Chris had one. All right, what's your throw up story? Well, you have a Bills hoodie on to start with. Okay, all right. Somebody else, share your story. That's awesome. The exercising.
Oh, so our daughter in elementary school had a science project, and it was mold. And so it was mold on cream cheese, mold on
cream cheese and water.
Water.
Cream cheese this way and that way.
Yeah. So anyway, so we did. It's in the kitchen. We one of the bottom cupboards we completely took out and put all these mold samples. Right. Well, you can finish the story.
It got so, like, it was fine for the first few weeks, and she's collecting data, but then all of a sudden the kitchen started stinking. And we were halfway through collection, and she wouldn't get a good grade if she didn't finish her, it got so bad we could use the kitchen for the last, like, week and a half. And so then when it was done, Daddy went to clean up.
Yeah.
And Daddy
I
couldn't
believe it.
clean up.
I lost it.
And he puked all over the kitchen. Yeah. So guess what Lana got to do? She got to clean up the mold and the bathroom.
The things that you will do so that the students get an A, right?
Yeah.
Somebody else.
Okay, it's not really a throw-up story. It's a little bit opposite. Okay, so I was telling him about last night after church. I went to get some. Last night after church, I went to go get some Pizza Hut, and every slice of pizza I ate, I just like poured a packet of red peppers on. Ooh. So and I was loving it because I had some high C right next to me. Then this morning I woke up and my stomach wasn't feeling so well. So during class, this is gonna get a little graphic. during class, I started letting out some air. And you know when you kind of lean over to the side to make it silent. Well, I tried to do that and it didn't work. So I just towards the end of the class, I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for a walk around the hallways. And then I ended up going to the bathroom, and long story short, I was in there for about 20 minutes. And when I got out, everybody was leaving the classroom and was like, dude, where were you? And I missed the whole class.
Yeah, because if it doesn't work one way, it can work the other way. Somebody else. It will come out though, right? Somebody else, anybody else? I don't know if we're going to be able to top that one. Anybody else? Jesus?
So last time I threw up was about 3 years ago when I was in 4th grade. And I went to eat lunch for Friday, and I got this pizza. It tasted kind of funny. So I went down to the waitress office. She's like, "Are you okay?" I said I had a stomachache. So she told me to lay down in a room. She put a trash can right next to me. She closed the door, and then everything came out.
In there. In there. Awesome. Well, here's the deal. Anybody else?
I'm not sure.
All right, yeah.
All right, so,
Yeah, talk about this one, yeah.
Yeah, I actually had food poisoning through Chipotle. And I used to think that Chipotle is the healthiest place to go. So after that, I ate the Chipotle and I woke up at 4 a.m. It was just hurting so bad, and then it's trying to push out everything, but there was nothing left in my stomach. So I'm scarred for life. I don't like Chipotle, and I recommend it. And you should stop going there too.
Well, and it's interesting, whatever you tie throwing up to, especially if it's a food item and you tie it. There's some ties that I have to throwing up that make no sense at all, but because whatever happened that made me throw up, I won't go there anymore. Here's the deal. All of us like to be a certain situation when we throw up. When Rose is throwing up, she wants no one around her. She wants no one around her. She wants to go in the bathroom. When we first got married, my wife and I, when she threw up the first time, I wanted to be nice and be a great husband. She's like, "Get out of here!" And she wants to throw up by herself. When I throw up, I want somebody helping me. Now, Rose is not going to help me. She's not going to help me. She's not going to do that kind of stuff. She's going to go, "Ugh," and get out of there. My son, my great throw-up story is my son Jay, when he was young. Jay had this thing that, Jay's autistic, and he's on the spectrum, and he had these different things. Whenever there's a big change, it manifests itself in some kind of physical kind of activity. Well, there was a stage in his life when that whole frustration or that whole resistance to change manifested itself in projectile vomiting. And Jay would be in the back seat, and he's in the back seat of my Volvo at the time, and he's in the back seat, and he's in the middle because he's in a car seat, and he projectile vomits, and it goes all the way to the front, and it hits the front dash. All of us have a way that we like to vomit. Everybody say that word with me, vomit. 1, 2, 3. Vomit. Oh, you can do better than that. All right, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Vomit. Okay, you'll understand why we had this conversation later on in the message. We're in this message series called Christian Atheists. If you missed some of the previous weeks, I'm going to go back over them again. You might ask this question if you weren't here last week or the week before: what in the world is a Christian atheist? Now, we know what an atheist is. We know what an atheist is. We know that an atheist is someone who does not believe in God, and therefore that someone does not live as if God exists. They don't believe in God, and therefore because they don't believe in God, they don't live like God exists. They're going to it doesn't mean that they're bad people. I know atheists, and atheists aren't bad people. They're great people. They live life. They do some of the regular things that people do. So I'm not beating up on the atheists. But we're talking about Christian atheists. What is a Christian atheist? Well, let me give you a definition. A Christian atheist is someone who believes in God but lives as if God does not exist. Someone who believes in God, but then lives as if God does not exist. Those who believe in God, now the first message we said this. The first message we talked about this. Those who believe in God but don't know Him. And we talked about that 94% of Americans say they believe in God or some kind of spiritual force, but they don't live like they believe in God. All right? The second message we said last week is those who believe in God but don't fear him. And we talked about fear. Fear not being God's going to take a lightning bolt and strike you down every time you do something bad. Fear not being that God's going to beat you up because you vomited. Not that kind of fear, but fear meaning that I believe I love God. I love God. I obey God. I respect God. That's what we talk about when we say fear. So people who believe in God but don't respect him, don't love him, don't obey him. Next week is a sermon that's going to be like this. I believe in God, but I don't really trust him. But tonight is my favorite of all the four of the messages because it's the message that has the greatest potential to be a velvet brick. Anybody know what a velvet brick? If you've been around here a little bit, every now and then I have what I call a velvet brick message. A velvet brick message is a message where you don't really know that the brick hits you until you get home, and you've been home, or maybe tomorrow morning you'll wake up and say, my goodness gracious, he threw a brick and I didn't even know it hit me. A velvet brick. So tonight's message is probably the one that probably has the most hit to it. But I think you're going to resonate with the message. So here's tonight's topic. Those who believe in God but don't want to go overboard. Not going to do the fanatic thing. Not going to be the crazies. Not going to be the Jehovah's Witnesses knocking on doors. Not going to wear John 3:16 under my eye black. Not going to go around and proselytize and try to tell people about. Not going to go overboard. I believe in God, but I don't want to be one of those Christians that's a fanatic. I don't want to do that crazy Jesus freak kind of stuff. So I believe in God, but I don't want to be one of those Christians. You've seen them. Those Christians, you know. The fact is, the passage for today comes from the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation is the last book in the Bible. It's a prophetic book. It's written by the Apostle John. So it's a really, really kind of cool book. Usually when people want to know about the Bible, people talk usually about Revelation. Young people, old people, everybody wants to know about the end time. Look at the movies. If you look at the movies that are in movie theater today, what do you see in the movie theater today? Every movie seems to be about end time, right? You know, San Andreas Drops. We're going to have this big kind of earthquake and half of the west coast is going to fall off. Or we're going to have these space invaders and they're going to come in, they're going to destroy. How come it is that LA and New York and Washington, D.C. are always getting destroyed in the movies? How come that is? How come it's always LA, New York, and Washington? I want to live some time in my life where my place, my hometown is not destroyed when the end comes. You know, I need to go to the Midwest or somewhere up in the mountains. Anyway, Revelation, Jesus is writing these letters to 7 churches. 7 churches. 7 different letters to 7 different churches. And he's writing to each church and he's talking a little bit about what is going on in the church. Now, Jesus writes these 7 letters, but there's one church that Jesus, in most of the letters, Jesus says stuff like, hey, you're doing a great job, keep on doing it. Or he says, hey, you're doing a great job here, but you're not doing a good job here, make some corrections. But there's only one church that Jesus says, you're not doing anything right. You're not doing anything right. I have no props to give you. I have nothing to give you. No accolades, no props. You're not doing anything right. No consolation prize, no participant trophy. You know, we live in a day where everybody gets a trophy, right? So every church should have gotten a trophy, but Jesus says you don't even get a participation trophy. The church is a church called Laodicea. Laodicea. Now, you got to know a little bit about Laodicea. Laodicea was a very wealthy city. In fact, Laodicea was a city that 35 years before this letter was written had a massive earthquake and totally destroyed the city. And then 35 years later, they were able to totally rebuild the city. That's how wealthy they were. It was not much different than Fairfax County or where we live. They had very, very nice theaters. They had very, very, very nice homes. They were a very rich area. In fact, they were known for their massive theaters, for their huge stadiums, for their lavish public baths, for all of that kind of stuff. They were kind of like the Vegas of their day. You know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. They were kind of like the Vegas of their day. They had all kinds of stuff going on, but this is what Jesus says to them. He says, I know you inside and out, and I find little to my liking. You're not cold. You're not hot. I mean, you're lukewarm. So it's like the three little bears. This one's too hard. This one's too soft. This one is just right. This porridge is too hot. This porridge is too cold. This one is just right. But Jesus has a different idea. He says, I would rather you, or you're not cold, you're not hot. Far better to be either cold or hot. You're stale. You're stagnant. You make me want to vomit. You brag, I'm rich, I got it made, I don't need anything from anyone. Oblivious to the fact that you're pitiful, blind beggar, threadbare and homeless. Look at me. I stand at the door and knock. If you hear me call and open the door, I'll come right in and sit down to supper with you. So Jesus is saying to the people in Laodicea, I got you. I got you read. I know what's going on with you. I know you inside and out. You know, there's a story in the Bible where Jesus calls a prophet to go one day and to anoint the next king of Israel. And the prophet tells this guy, go get all your sons. And he lines all his sons up. And the prophet, the pastor, the person of God looks at this big kind of stocking son and thinks, that person must be king. And God says, no, that's not it. And he looks at the next one, that person must be king. No, that's not it. That person, no. And so he gets through all of the brothers, and none of them, God says, is king. And he says to Jesse, do you have any more sons? And he says, yeah, I have one called David. But David, how can I explain it? David doesn't look like a king. David doesn't act like a king. David doesn't even smell like a king. He smells like the sheep. And the prophet says, well, bring David in. And when David comes in, he doesn't look like any of the rest of them. God says he's a king. And then God says, this is the reason why. Get this. Because people look at the outward, but God looks on the heart. And so what God was saying to that great church was, I know you inside and out, outside and in. I know you say you believe, but I also know how you live, and there is a difference. How we live, if you want to write something down, right? This is what you want to write down. How we live actually reflects the true reality of what we believe. I don't care what you tell me. You can tell me that you're Reds. You can tell me hell to the Redskins. You can tell me you're a Redskin fan forever. But how you live will tell me whether or not you're a Redskin fan. You can tell me that you're totally in love with this person. And you just love this person, but how you live determines whether or not you love that person. You can tell me, I love this class, I'm going to get straight A's in the class, but how you live will determine whether or not what you believe. I'm not just talking about what you say you believe, but how you live makes a difference. So Jesus says to them, I know you inside and out, and I know, and I don't find much to my liking. You're not cold, you're not hot. It's like if you drink a cup of coffee. Hot coffee is good, right? We like hot coffee. I get my coffee extra hot at Starbucks. That means it's 210 degrees. Extra hot. Or I get my coffee iced, right? So I put a little ice in it, get a venti, get 4 shots, some Splenda, can't have sugar anymore, but I get an iced coffee. But I've never ordered warm coffee. I've never ordered warm coffee. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't had warm coffee. Here's what happens to me. Sometimes, maybe this happens to you. I get coffee every morning. I bring my coffee to my desk, and I put it on my desk. And I never really finish a cup of coffee. Never. I kind of sip it, and I never finish the cup of coffee. But the problem is sometimes I'll leave it on my desk, and then I'll bring my next cup in the next day. And then I'll bring my next cup in the next day. And I don't know if you've ever done this before, but now I look at the tag on it to see what day it was made. But I had this situation where I put my cup on the coffee table over here, but there was another cup over here, and this cup was a cup that had been there for 4 days that had some mold in it, and I drank the wrong cup, and it was lukewarm, and it was nasty, and it made me want to vomit. Jesus said, you're not hot, you're not cold, you're lukewarm. You're lukewarm. What's interesting, you got to know the history of Laodicea. Laodicea was such a rich place that they had hot and cold water. And the way it worked is they had these cisterns. And these cisterns were these kind of mountain kind of streams. And they had hot springs and they had cold springs. And so they would literally take the water and pump it from the hot springs up so that they could at their festivals have hot water for those who were the upper echelon of society. So when you wanted your hot drink, they would literally pump it up, and they had to do it fast, because if they didn't do it fast, what would happen? It would be warm by the time it got to the person. So they would pump it out of the springs so that it would be hot, or they would pump it out of the cold springs so it would be cold. And so when Jesus says to them, you're neither hot nor cold, they get exactly what he's talking about. Because if you were looking for hot and you got warm, you didn't want it, you tossed it out. If you were looking for cold and you got warm, you didn't want it, you tossed it out. And so Jesus, they knew exactly what he was talking about. He was basically saying, listen, not even you want warm water when you're supposed to be hot or cold. And what do? When you get it, you spit it out of your mouth. That word spit, that word vomit is a Greek word. It means to eject matter from the stomach through the mouth. Synonyms would be to be sick, to spew, to heave, to retch, to gag. It's like, it's like you wouldn't eat moldy bread, right? So you wouldn't eat moldy bread. You wouldn't want to eat stale water. If you ate moldy bread or you ate stale water, you would toss it. Your body would say gross. You wouldn't want it. I mean, when you eat that kind of stuff, wherever it can come out, it comes out. We've heard some stories tonight. What happens is your body is rejecting that. What Jesus is saying is this: I don't want lukewarm, stale, stagnant Christians. How many of you know what an oxymoron is? You know what an oxymoron is? You've heard the oxymoron. When you put two different words together that are the opposites, and you put them together. So act natural, right? Act natural is an oxymoron, right? People tell you to act natural. What do you say to them? What do you mean act natural? Genuine imitation. Have you ever seen the word genuine imitation fur? Isn't that great? Genuine imitation. What about tight slacks? Tight slacks. Or jumbo shrimp. Right? What about government efficiency? Or Microsoft Works? That's my Apple thingy there. Perhaps the greatest oxymoron in history of the world would be a stale, stagnant Christian, or a stale, stagnant disciple of Jesus. We could talk about all kinds of ways to describe it, but I thought that I would give you some 10 qualities of a stale, stagnant Christian, because it'll help you to understand whether or not you fit into the category. So here you go. Some of you, you're going to listen to these, and if you're real honest, you might say, ooh, ouch, James, you're stepping on my toe. Well, I know I stepped on my own toes as I was writing it, so I figured it'd be good for everyone else. Here's number one. If you're taking notes, number one is this: they crave the acceptance from people more than the acceptance from God. Stale, stagnant Christians crave more the acceptance of people than God. Timothy said in last days there would be people who would be lovers of themselves. We live in a selfie generation, don't we? A selfie generation. Do you like me? Do you approve of me? Do you like my shoes? Do you like my kicks? Do you like my hat? Do you like my hair? Do you like my house? Do you like my car? I'll give you another angle. Here's another angle. Please approve of me. Please like my picture. Please tell me I fit in. Hey, don't you like me? If you don't like me, I'll conform. I'll change so you can like me. Please just like me. We live in that world. I want you to accept me. Jesus said, this is very interesting. Jesus said, be careful when everybody likes you. Be careful. Be careful when everyone speaks well of you. If everyone speaks well of you, you're not really following the Lord, because Jesus said, if you follow me, let me give you a hint. Everyone's not going to speak well of you. Number 2, stale, stagnant Christians rarely share their faith in Christ. Stale, stagnant Christians rarely will tell other people about Christ. There's so many reasons why. We don't want to be weird. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to offend people. Honestly, what I would say is that the heart of this not sharing the faith is stale, stagnant Christians do not believe in the power of God to transform other people's life. And if you don't believe in the power of God that transforms lives, then you won't share your faith. Usually what happens is their own lives have not been transformed. And if their own lives have not been transformed, then they don't believe that God has the power to transform other people's lives. Jesus was very clear about this. He said, you stand up for me against the world's opinions, and I'll stand up for you before my Father in heaven. Still stagnant Christians don't share their faith. Number 3, still stagnant Christians rationalize their sins by doing whatever to alleviate their guilt. Let me say that do that in everyday language. Still stagnant Christians will do everything they can to downplay their sin so that they don't feel guilty. We live in a day where people I like this rebranding. Rebranding is a big word in our society, our culture, right? Rebranding sin. Don't you like that? Adultery is not an adultery. It's having an affair. I love that, right? Right? It doesn't sound so much better. It's not adultery. I'm having an affair. It sounds so much better. It's not pornography. It's adult entertainment. It's not pornography. It's adult entertainment. It just sounds so much better. Profanity is not profanity. It's an adult language. And so if you're a child, you can't drop the F-bomb. But when you get to be an adult, if you want to drop the F-bomb, it's all right because it's adult language. We're rebranding it. We're renaming it. We're changing the name because it makes us feel so much better. Really what it is this sense. I'm not as bad as so-and-so, and it's my life, and I can do whatever I want with it. Who are you to judge me? Ever heard anybody say this? Who are you to judge me? You're not my judge. Get out of here. I can do what I want to do. It's my life. Number 4, still stagnant Christians think more about life on earth than eternity in heaven. Still stagnant Christians are consumed with what we can get down here. And so it's like this. The person with the most toys win, right? And so I'm going to get all that I can down here, and I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death about what happens afterwards because I'm so tied in down here. And Paul said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. So we hear people all the time, I don't want to die. I mean, we have people who would rather live to 105 wearing diapers than they would want to die. I mean, there are people who want to live forever because we're so afraid to die. Number 5, still stagnant Christians gauge their morality by comparing themselves to other people. I'm not as bad as Lamar Odom. I mean, I wasn't in a brothel. I didn't spend $75,000 in a brothel. I'm not as bad as he is. Or I'm not as bad as this person. Or you know what? That person's way worse than I am. And so I'm pretty good. When I look at that person, how come it is whenever we're comparing ourselves to somebody, we always find a person that's worse off than us? Have you ever found a person that's like 100 times better than you and said, I want to compare myself to that person? We always find somebody. You know why we do that? Because then we look good, right? I'm good. I'm good. Number 6. Still stagnant Christians only turn to God when they're in a bind. When things are going good, no one really needs God. The weather is good, the kids are good, everything's healthy, no one's fighting, we got money to pay the bills, everything's flying on all 8 cylinders, everything's good. But whoops, somebody has cancer, we need to take our God out of the box. And we need to use our God. We need to pray to that God and say, God, would you help with this person with cancer? So the person has chemo and gets cured of cancer. We put God back in our box and we go on living life. And then suddenly something happens with the kids. We pull God out of our pocket and out of our box again. And we say, God, would you help our kids? Our kids get straightened out. We put God right back in the box again. Still stagnant Christians usually only turn to God when they're in the issue. Number 7, still stagnant Christians want to be saved from the penalty of sin without changing their lives. Want to be saved, don't want to, in other words, we want the get out of hell free card. Ever heard of the get out of hell free card? God just becomes the get out of hell free card. Paul talked about this. Paul says, should we go on sinning so that grace may abound? It's the sinning, it's kind of grace that we can just kind of depend on and not have to deal with the issues. Number 8, stagnant, stale Christians will give whenever it's convenient, as long as it doesn't impact their standard of living. Stale stagnant Christians will never give when it hurts. We'll always just give out of what I got. So I look at my bank account, and if I look at my wallet, if I have any extra in there, then I'll give it, right? Because it's not going to hurt me. Still stagnant Christians rarely give their time, their talents, or their treasures in such a way that it will impact their lives. Number 9, still stagnant Christians are not much different than the rest of the world. They're not weird. Remember that message series, we're called to be weird? We're not called to be normal. The world is normal. We're called to be weird. They're not weird. They're just normal. They go to the same movies, listen to the same music, wear the same clothes, say the same things, sleep in the same bed. So they're just normal. No difference whatsoever. They're just normal, just comfortable. Number 10. Still stagnant Christians want the benefits of what Christ did without conforming to who he is. I want all the good stuff that God has to give me, but I don't want to do anything for the kingdom. I think the reason why this is so passionate for me because I've done the still stagnant Christian thing. I've done the still stagnant Christian thing. I was usually a good Christian boy until I got about 17 years old. And at 18, I decided that, you know what, I didn't go out and say I was going to be a stale, stagnant Christian. I just said, you know what, it's time for me to enjoy my life. It's time for me to do my thing. This is my life, my money, I'm going to do my thing. And I did my thing. And I did all of my thing. And I woke up one day and I realized that I was a stale, stagnant Christian. I just realized I was a stale, stagnant Christian, that there was nothing different about me. I was clubbing it on Saturday night and doing all the things that happened in the club and all the things that happened after the club, and then I would get up on Sunday morning and I'd go to church and do my thing and feel like God was getting his part and the world was getting their part, and I was a stale, stagnant Christian. I think what happens in that situation is people kind of become part-time Christians and full-time whatever else they're doing, right? We're called to be full-time Christians, no matter what we're doing. But still stagnant Christians are always part-time Christians. It would be like me being a part-time pastor, a part-time Christian and a full-time pastor. That doesn't work. They don't go together. Or it could be like you being a part-time Christian, a full-time business person, or a part-time Christian, a full-time mom, or a part-time Christian, and full-time student. They have to go together. Tragically, that's where so many people are. Here's my theory. See if you agree with me. It is much easier to be a stale, stagnant Christian in the culture that we live in today. Because we have so much stuff that we really don't need God. See places all over the world where they're struggling for where their next meal comes from, where they're going to live, what they're going to wear. They have this whatever that they're clinging to God with all they have. But in our great American dream syndrome, where we have everything compared to the world, it's a lot easier to be a stale, stagnant Christian. It's almost difficult to be a true Christian in our culture. Here's the good news. There are places all over the world that if you're a follower of Jesus, it means something because it costs you something. There are places all over the world. It could cost you your job. It could cost you your reputation. It might even cost you your life. There's places in the world right now where ISIS is going, and if they know that it's a house and they don't know it's a Christian house, they'll put a big N on it that stands for Nazarene. And that's talking about Jesus. Jesus is called that. They'll put a big N on it. And here's what you get. You get 1 hour to either decide to give up your Christian faith or to leave your home or to die. See, in that kind of place, Christians don't spend their time fighting with each other because they need each other. In that kind of place, Christians don't spend their time majoring on minor issues like doctrine and different things like that because it means something to be a Christian there. See, I think when it becomes more difficult to be a Christian in the United States of America, it will be the greatest thing that ever happened to us. You hear people all the time, oh, we don't want persecution, we don't want this, man. Then it'd be the greatest thing that happened to us because then we would decide whether or not we're going to be full-time Christians. You kind of have to make a decision. You have to kind of say, I'm not going to be a Christian, and I walk away. Jesus said it's better to walk away than it is to do what I was doing, which is play both sides of the fence. Jesus was talking directly into a culture that was so similar to ours today. They had worldly wealth, they had theaters, they had shopping centers, they had stadiums. We have so much more than so many other parts of the world. It's almost like you don't feel like you need God. But this is what Jesus said. Listen to me. It's almost like he's talking exactly to us. You brag. I'm rich. I've got it made. I need nothing from anyone, oblivious to the fact that you're pitiful, blind, beggar, threadbare, and homeless. And so we can sit in the room and I can say, well, I'm not as rich as Donald Trump. Right? I don't say stuff like, I'm not as poor as this person who's homeless, or I'm not as poor as this person who might be in Asia somewhere. I'm not as poor as this person that might be in Haiti. We always say I'm not as rich as Donald Trump. And Jesus said, I know your reputation. I know you say I got it made, I got all this stuff, but listen to me. And the things that really matter, the things that matter for eternity. See, when you focus your attention here, then if you drive a good car, if you got a good house, if you got great letters off after your name, if you got a corner office, and nothing is wrong with those things in and of themselves, get yourself a good car, get yourself a good house, get yourself letters at the end of your name, get yourself a good office. But in all of that, we better be full-time Christians and full-time business people, full-time Christians and full-time students, full-time Christians and full-time parents. So here's a quick question. Was Jesus talking to Christians in this passage? You think he was talking to Christians in this passage? He didn't say stale, stagnant Christians. I said that. He's talking about those who are stale or stagnant. Were those stale, stagnant followers of Jesus or not? Here's what he calls them: pitiful. That doesn't sound like real Christian. Blind, beggar. That doesn't sound quite right. And threadbare. Now, about right now, God does what he always does best. He kind of speaks to us. We're hearing all of this and he's speaking to us and he's whispering in our ears and he's saying something to us. And he usually says, James, you're sounding you sound like you're a little bit on the S&S side of this thing. The stale and stagnant part of this. So what do? If he's saying to you, well, you're sounding stale and stagnant, what do? I'm glad you asked. The last part of this passage says this, Revelation 3:20. Look at me. I stand at the door. I knock. If you hear me call and open the door, I'll come right in and sit down to supper with you. So I can imagine there are people that God calls tonight, and maybe he's knocking on the door, and maybe you're one of the people to say, well, I believe in him, but I don't quite know God. And so what do? What do you do if you don't quite know God? Well, let me tell you, this happens to me. It doesn't happen to me as frequent as it used to be. When my kids would get excited when I came home, and my son Jay doesn't get as excited as he used to get. He's getting less and less excited every year. But when I would get home, and today he still does it, he'll hear my car drive up. I'll open the garage, and he'll come to the garage door, and he runs and sees my car, and he says, Daddy's home. And he gets excited about me being home. And like I said, every year it's less and less. One day he just stay downstairs in the basement and do his thing. But right now he still comes upstairs. And it's this excitement. And so God says, I'm Dad. And I'm waiting. And if you will just come back and connect with me, you'll get to know me. Jesus never walks away from us. Jesus is always present. He's always available to us. He says, you want to know me? Open the door. We'll get to know one another. He says, you don't fear me? Open the door. I'll tell you what it means to love me. I'll tell you what it means to respect me. I'll tell you what it means to obey me. Maybe you know him tonight. Maybe you served him for a long while. But maybe your temperature has just gone warm. Maybe there's no fire under you. And so instead of being this hot, kind of on fire Christian, this authentic full-time Christian, you kind of become stale. You become lukewarm. Open the door. Jesus promises that he'll light the fire again. He'll help you to get hot. He'll help you to get fiery again. And then all of a sudden, those things that really describe a stale, stagnant Christian will turn around. All of a sudden, you'll crave the acceptance of Jesus more than you do humanity. When's the last time you've craved Jesus? When's the last time Jesus' opinion was more important to you than the opinion of other people? All of a sudden, you'll share him wherever and whenever possible, because your life will be transformed and you'll believe in the power of God to transform people's lives and to make them different. All of a sudden you'll long to be with him eternally in heaven, so you'll do all that you can on earth so that you can join him eternally. All of a sudden you understand that this is just a pass-through. All of a sudden you'll give in a way that doesn't make any sense at all, because you believe in God's ability to multiply your gift. And you believe when God says, if you give, I will give it back to you, pressed down, flowing, overflowing. All of a sudden you begin to seek God faithfully. You begin to be grieved or to be upset over sin and the things that the world throws out as sin. I was listening to Tony Kornheiser. I'm a Tony Kornheiser little. Some of you won't understand that because you're not old enough. But us old people, there are little radio shows that we like. And one of the ones I like is a Tony Kornheiser show. You might know him from ESPN. And he's on ESPN and he does the Tony and PTI, Partner Interruption. But he was on talking about Playboy this week. And it was an interesting conversation because he was talking about how Playboy magazine decided they would do no more naked women. And I was like, yes! Because eventually they found no more naked women. They're done. Why? Because they're not going to buy it anymore. No one buys it anymore, right? Because you don't need to buy Playboy for naked women, right? And so they're done. So they made this decision, and the guys on the show were mourning the fact that they weren't going to do naked women anymore because they grew up with, and I'm thinking to myself, man, that just began to frustrate me. Because no one, when they're having a conversation, is thinking about somebody's daughter or somebody's little girl or somebody's niece or somebody's aunt or somebody's mother being objectified and Googled at and looked at like they're a piece of flesh or something. And it began to disturb me when you do the full-time Christian thing. When you move away from the stale and the stagnant Christian, the things that grieve and disappoint God begin to disappoint us. When people are treated badly, when people are taken advantage of, it begins to bother us on the inside. And then you begin to be different. You begin to be set apart. Set apart for God's service. Set apart. So what does your behavior say about what you believe? What about what does your living, your walk, and your talk, and your actions say about what you believe? See, we always say our talk, our belief is what matters. No. Our talk doesn't matter. What really matters is how we live. And so, take an opportunity tonight, in closing, to examine your walk, our walk, the way we live, the way we talk, the way we act, the way we treat people, what we do in the dark, what we do in the light. What does your actions say about your belief? If we really believe, then going overboard is not an action. Have you seen what people do when they believe in something? People will go to the deck if they believe in something. They will. In our society, it's no problem. People will go to the deck if they believe in something. What I found is so tough. Let me quote Brennan Manning here, one of my favorite quotes of all time. What an unbelieving world finds so unbelievable is Christians who confess Jesus with their mouths and then go out and deny him by their lifestyles. You know what the world knows? The world knows what Jesus is like. The world knows what Jesus is like. In fact, the world would all become Christians if Christians were like Jesus. What they've discovered is that we're not much like the people that we claim that we follow. What an unbelieving world finds so unbelievable is Christians who confess Jesus with their mouths and go out and deny him by their lifestyles. And so as I was preparing this sermon, this message this week, there was some praying that I had to do. Because there's some times where I confess Christ, but if somebody cuts me off, I deny him by my lifestyle. And I don't curse anybody, I don't flip in the finger, but I can put my car into Sports Plus, and I can go around them so fast and get back in their lane that their head spins. I just can't imagine Jesus doing that. I can't imagine Jesus doing that. I had to pray this weekend because there are times when somebody will say something to me, and I won't say it, but I'll think it. Like, get out of my face. I can't stand you. I'll think it, I won't say it. I can't imagine Jesus thinking that way about someone he created or someone created in the image of God. I had to pray because sometimes I can be extremely selfish. That, I can know that my wife needs help with something, and I can hear it. And I can feel like my ears are closed. I can keep on watching the football game and ignore it. Jesus loving somebody and deciding to ignore it, I think he would step up. So I prayed this week as I was doing this message. What about you? What does your life say about your belief? Would you pray with me? Father God. The velvet bread. Ouch! It's not really a matter, God, of going overboard. It's not really a matter of going overboard. The question is, are we hot or are we cold? Or are we stale and stagnant? Wherever we are today, Father, help us not to be satisfied. Help us to want to go to the next level. Whatever that next level is, whatever that next step is, help us to be there. Now, Father, maybe there are people here tonight who don't know you. And they were true and they were honest and they were whatever they would say, I don't know. I believe, but I don't know. And today, Father, my prayer is that they will open themselves up to you by praying a prayer that goes something like this. God, I just want to know you. I'm opening myself up to you. I want to know you. And so, Father, here's what I know about myself. I'm not living the way I should. Forgive me. Help me to know you. There might be some folks today who aren't respecting you, who just aren't fearing you because they don't respect you, they don't obey you. And the first step is for them just to be obedient, for them to just listen to your voice. And so they can pray a prayer, God, help me to hear your voice amongst all the other voices around me. And when I hear it, and when you speak to me, Father, give me the power to obey what you tell me to do, whatever that is. And there's some folks here whose spiritual fervor has just kind of gone cold. And they need to be lit aflame again. And Father, help us to pray a prayer that goes like this. God, I want to be on fire for you. Whatever that means. Lord, help me. Help me to focus my attention on you. To make sure that I'm connected with you. So that you might bring some newness to my relationship. You might move me from the stale, stagnant place and move me to a place of vibrant faith, where I'm more about you, pleasing you, than other people. Where I'm more than ready to share my faith, where I'm more than ready to give and give, and I'm more than ready to not compare myself to anybody but you and want to be the best I can be. Help me in your name.